So thank you for agreeing to answer our questions, Suheil. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
Shall we start by clarifying for our listeners the difference between the United Nations, so the Intergovernmental International, the United Nations Associations, so the civic societies, and the model United Nations?
Right. United Nations, or the UN, was formed 80 years ago. With eventually 193 states of the world signing up to the UN Charter, headquartered in New York. That's the UN, which is an intergovernmental association. The UNA is the people's movement behind it by civil society groups all across the world, in towns and villages, universities, towns like Harpenden. So UNA Harpenden. And Model UN is mimicking or simulating the UN sessions, the General Assembly, Security Council, at schools and universities over a day or two, talking about debating resolutions. That's the model United Nations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first few questions that the students had were about the model UN clubs, the structure, and Harpenden UN. So I'll start with this question. So what are the benefits that young people can get from taking part in a model UN club?
That's a good question. I believe there are multiple benefits. The biggest being learning how to compromise on positions that people take, that being able to compromise. But other benefits include researching complex issues, differentiating between facts and falsehoods, particularly in the days of AI, developing a strategy to meet an important objective, developing a policy or a plan for implementation, networking, collaborating, working with others within your team and outside your team, and finally, obviously, diplomatic negotiations, whether it's a friend or foe country.
And what's your view on the debates that the clubs might do?
What for young people particularly? I think young people can start by learning about global and social issues through the United Nations. For example, learning about child labor, gender equality, climate change. These are issues that young people can start learning about. Participate through their teachers in structured debates on some of these issues, and then going with their families and visiting the UN in Geneva or New York. So that can be quite impactful.
Brilliant. So you've just mentioned the impact that young people can have and the benefits. We'll come on to the UN Youth Chamber later on. What are the primary goals for the Harpenden UNA and, if you know, the UN in general over the next year in terms of engaging with the younger generation?
For the United Nations Association in Harpenden, what we are currently doing is we are hosting a schools arts competition for senior schools to celebrate the United Nations at 80. We'll be 80 years old. There's a competition which we're gathering the contributions.
That's brilliant because art transcends languages, doesn't it? Right. And cultures, and
it'll be art, music, anything that's creative in nature to celebrate the UN.
Fantastic.
We're also helping organize Model United Nations at various schools. And of course, our free public lectures are open to young people as well as other people. So those are the short-term goals. In terms of UN itself, there are two big goals at the moment. There's a Pact for the Future, which includes younger people, the young generation, pledging concrete actions to create an inclusive world for tomorrow's generations. And also there is another program called 1 for 8 billion, where they're trying to seek for the first time a woman to lead the United Nations Secretary General. So those are the two programs that are happening at the moment.
Suheil, you mentioned an art competition that you were running. So this is the UNA and the Harpenden Society that are running this.
That's right.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's a competition we're running to celebrate the 80 years of the UN, as you can see in this poster. The poster and material has been sent to all the senior schools in Harpenden. And we basically want to encourage the students in these senior schools to give us their entries or anything creative that expresses what the UN stands for, what it should be, what it means to them, whether it's a piece of writing, an art, or anything creative. And there will be prizes for that, but it will be book tokens of various amounts of money for first, second, and third prize for 2 groups.
Brilliant. And so you need to register your school by the 7th of November. So if there's anyone at your school that might be able to help you to register your school, you can put in your entry.
That's right.
And the details are on that.
Yeah, there's a link
poster.
There. Yeah, true.
Okay, well, good luck, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
So if some of the younger people that were watching this video, if they wanted to come to the Harpenden UNA, how would they find out about your lectures?
They can find out by subscribing either directly or through the parents to our newsletter. And we advertise through the town council website and other. We've got our own website. And we put up notices around the town through the town council, so they can find out what's happening.
Brilliant. I saw a poster in Godfrey's actually the other day.
All right, right.
Good. Okay, so moving on to the next topic. What issues are most prominent, do you think, that are in Harpenden that the UN Association feels most equipped to address?
I mean, the issues that UNA Harpenden champions are actually global issues, and they're based on 7 ethical and universal principles. Mm-hmm. These principles are peace, justice, equality, democracy, harmony, well-being, and sustainable development. It covers all these aspects, focusing on humans first. And we campaign, we provide public lectures, discussions, and book clubs to cover these areas. So that's how we engage with people in Harpenden.
And that's when I met you first.
That's right.
I think we were talking about the impact of just ethics and
yes.
morals and religion.
Yes, and we were talking about how to get young people engaged as well.
Yeah. So what do you think is the greatest impact that the Harpenden UNA or a Harpenden UNA resolution has caused?
In my opinion, I think a recent resolution that we helped write was a resolution about the rise of authoritarianism in India. We wrote a resolution with a preamble and a conclusion and actions, sent it to the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, headed by Lamy, the Foreign Secretary, for them to read and respond, and they did respond. So we used that resolution to pressurize the UK government to do more to change India's course to protect its minorities. 200 million minorities are being sidelined, and we are encouraging the UK government to help India be more equal to all of them. And we got support from many other UN groups across London and South East regions. So that's one of the benefits of doing a resolution. We collaborate with other like-minded UNA groups.
And one of the questions that one of the students had for Suheil was how you go about writing an impactful resolution. And Suheil and I have agreed that if we were invited to one of your debates, perhaps in school, we would come and discuss how that might be done, and give you some top tips on how to write or draft a resolution.
That's right.
I hope that's a deal that we can strike. Yeah. Okay. Next question, another good one. How does the UNA in Harpenden connect with local residents to the broader mission of the United Nations?
Okay. The UNA Harpenden supports the goals and objectives of the United Nations. And we provide what we call a deliberation platform, a platform for awareness, understanding, questioning, challenging, and debating with each other and with experts that we bring from universities who are capable of talking about global, social, environmental issues. It also allows residents to network and work with others in the community on problems and solutions. And finally, we obviously submit resolutions to the UK government. So these are some of the ways we are broadening the appeal of the United Nations to the residents.
Okay, some brilliant questions. We're moving on to the next subject, which is more about the structure and development of the UN. So how does the main UN collaborate with regional organisation and governments?
I mean, this is an excellent question, and it's a. You might ask why is that important? I think in the long term, regionality or work collaborating together with countries in your region is the future, is the way to go. Because sovereignty by itself is not helping create peace and justice. We need to work with each other in the region and evolve a more mature structure beyond sovereignty that is capable of producing a more peaceful, stable, and collaborative world.
When you're using the word sovereignty, can you just clarify what you mean in this context?
Yes, I mean, the principle of state sovereignty, where each state was responsible for its own security and running the government, having elections, is a concept that came out in 1648 after centuries of war between France, Germany, England, etc. And there was it's a piece of Westphalia that evolved after the 30 Years' War in 1648. Out of that came the concept of sovereignty. But the last 80 years show that the sovereignty itself has not stopped wars from happening, because eventually big powers tend to dominate the small ones, and the big powers tend to conflict with each other. So in order to create a better balance, I think by creating regions, a bit like the European Union and other structures. I mean, some of these structures are economic, but they could be responsible for their own security. And if we had similar structures across the world, more or less of equal size, I think the world would be not only more peaceful, equal, but more collaborative as well.
So that's the governments, isn't it? The regional governments. Yeah. What about organisations? Who else does the UN collaborate with? Give me a couple of examples.
Well, the UN, in terms of conflict resolution, the UN works with regional experts in different regions of the world. Experts that are very good at understanding the local conflict much more. So the UN experts sit together with regional actors, regional experts, to work out how to resolve the conflict, and mediate, make policy, and exchange lessons from each other. So regional working actually is happening today. And it's also mentioned in the UN Charter, Chapter 8. I think more will evolve over the course of the year, but regional arrangements are one of the successes of the UN.
Thank you. That was a good question. I feel like we could talk about that one for quite a long time. Right. It's really complicated.
That was from Tom, I think, the question.
Yeah, excellent. Well done, Tom. What are some of the biggest challenges then that the UN currently faces? So you've talked about that sort of, the sovereignty part of it, and you've mentioned about the restructuring. But other than that, what do we think are the biggest challenges?
Currently, the biggest, I mean, this is a great question because it really is affecting the UN. The biggest challenge at the moment is the lack of funding. Primarily because of the US president withdrawing funds. The UN is forced to streamline its organization, lay off staff. Some of that might be beneficial. Plus, the closure of US aid is really affecting the humanitarian and aid programs of the UN. So these are huge challenges to find replacement money and funds. But the most intransigent challenge is the democratic nature of some of its institutions, which are basically dominated by the big powers. So, and most of them most of the decisions are made by male men who are at the top positions. So gender imbalance is really apparent. There's not enough positions given to women, for example. Also, what's missing is a democratic council of diverse and elected representatives. Because the UN is intergovernment, the citizens of the world don't have a say who represents us. We need a council where we can elect our own reps to be part of a democratic council. We also need a youth chamber where youth can provide their input. And I think those two would create a better balance of the outcome of some of the decisions being made.
So then reform then, what would be your major reforms? And this is another question. So what are the major reforms that are being considered and also are or needed within the UN system?
The two, I think I may have mentioned already one of them. The two major reforms one is called the Pact of the Future, which covers quite a few areas, including sustainable development and financing of it, international peace and security, that's always going to be needed, science, technology, and a digital compact, youth and future generations, and transforming the global governance aspect of UN, how to govern.
And that's called the Pact for the Future.
That's called the Pact for the Future, which came about after a summit in 2024. It also includes the ethical use of AI to benefit humanity. And the second big reform happening is called 1 for 8 billion, which is a movement that is launching support for a woman Secretary General, because that position is about to be, election is about to happen. And they are asking that for the first time there should be a woman Secretary General. I think that's a great idea.
I agree. Okay, thank you. We're going to change topic again because we've had a cluster of questions about climate change and environmental issues, which are clearly at the forefront of people's minds. What role does the UN play in climate change and environmental issues currently?
Good question. Climate change has always been at the top of the UN action list. For example, the COPs. The COP stands for Conference of the Parties. UN has initiated COPs every year. And with that, action groups and regional groups are working on climate change. It also produces climate reports. There's a famous and highly respected organization that is set up called IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. They produce very factual and well-respected climate reports. Climate change is also embedded in most of the 17 SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. UN plays, therefore, a leading global role in climate change. But ultimately, it's the members who need to take action on climate in their countries or jurisdictions.
So then we see those jurisdictions coming together, don't we, and the countries coming together at COP. So one of the questions is, at the last 2 COP climate conferences, these were held in very fossil fuel reliant countries. Yes. This is the question. Yeah. So should the UN attempt to choose host countries making more environmental progress?
Good question. I would say ideally yes, because if you choose a country that has done quite well in climate change regulation and action, that would have a huge and positive influence on the outcome of the COP. But the choice of deciding who hosts depends on factors like financial capability, infrastructure, travel connectivity, political stability, openness to welcoming others. And these are not necessarily aligned to environmental progress. US is a case in point. It covers everything except the environmental progress. China is possibly a unique exception because it meets all the others and is done quite well in climate change. But most of the countries, the requirements don't align with environmental progress.
Okay, so possibly an overlap with the next few questions, and these are about the UN supporting developing countries, because obviously there are arguments that climate change, environmental issues sort of overlap with development. So how does the UN support developing countries in achieving sustainable development goals?
I mentioned Sustainable Development Goals, which is a major program, the 17 of them. The purpose of many of them is really to address global inequality in all sorts of areas. So they are there to improve developing countries in many things like, for example, no poverty, zero hunger, clean water, and sanitation. These are essentially for developing countries. If we look at extreme poverty, since 1990, it dropped through the efforts of UN and aligned organizations. It dropped from 43% to 12%, and then with the help of China, that dropped by another 2% to 10%. So 43 to 10% through the efforts of the UN in terms of alleviating extreme poverty. But however, the targets will not be fully met by 2030. Extreme poverty, by the way, is defined as living below the international poverty line of $3 a day. So next time you buy a coffee, do think, that $3 could be saving somebody else from poverty.
That's a thoughtful point, isn't it? So staying on developing countries then, what is the most impactful resolution passed by the UN in recent years?
I would say, looking at all the resolutions, the most important one that I for me was the United Nations General Assembly resolution, because there are two types, General Assembly and Security Council. The resolution 70/1 in 2015 was a resolution called Transforming Our World, the 2020 Agenda for Sustainable Development. That was in 10 years ago. This has led to positive action through meeting the goals or attempting to meet the goals in 17 areas, from alleviating poverty to achieving global and regional partnerships for development. So that, I believe, is the most impactful resolution so far.
But still work to be done.
Still work to be done.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to something that's quite close to many people at the moment. We hear a lot about it on the news, is peace. And I think there were quite a few questions, all quite similar, drafted in different ways about how effective has the UN been in maintaining global peace and security. One sort of touched on preventing and de-escalating reoccurring conflicts. Another question, what impact has the UN had on conflict zones in recent years? What relevance does the UN have to global peacekeeping right now? So obviously young people really have this at the forefront of their mind for a number of reasons. And one question referred specifically to peace negotiations being held by small numbers of countries behind closed doors. So to what extent is the UN still relevant in preserving world peace?
Yes, that's a very important question. I recall Johan from Upper Sixth asking that question as well. If you look at the achievements of the UN, I would list at the top of the list conflict resolution and peacekeeping in many small and medium-sized conflicts across the world, in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. These are small and medium-sized conflicts. These are not necessarily picked up by mainstream media. You won't read it in the paper because their readership may not be interested or know about these countries. But these have been extensively documented by the UN website, which is a very rich website. And the other achievement of the UN since its founding has been the decolonization of global South states in the 60s and 70s. So those are the major achievements. But there have been failures as well. I mean, I could cover talking about relevance. Why do we bother with UN? Why UN?
Let's do it. I mean, I'm sure people are asking that question.
My answer would be, the UN is a unique global intergovernmental agency or association. There's nothing similar. All 193 member states in the world have signed up to its charter. There's no one else, no other organization has all 193 states. And the UN Charter itself, it provides an exceptional roadmap for a better world. So these are worth pursuing. Ultimately, like any democratic organization, it depends on its constituent members. If the members don't deliver, there's not much UN can do above and beyond its members. So there are many reasons why it's not working, but we won't go into the problems necessarily.
Well, not unless you can fix them all.
True.
So, well, let's just talk about then the positives of the UN, because I think we're both of the view that the UN is definitely worth continuing, pursuing and being members of. So Yusuf has a question: what changes have been brought about by the UN after its inauguration? So we're celebrating, aren't we, 80 years of the UN. So really, what sort of thing has it achieved?
Right. Excellent question from Yusuf. I mean, the UN was formed after a devastating World War II, and 80 years ago. It has since then has been established in three pillars of peace and security, one pillar, human rights and justice, second pillar, and the sustainable development goals that cover many developing nations. Those are the three pillars. And as I mentioned before, the UN Charter provides an excellent roadmap for the future. So if I were to list the top 10 achievements of the UN, I would list the following: maintaining international peace and security, top goal and achievement; promoting decolonization; promoting human rights; coordinating humanitarian aid; advancing sustainable development; eradicating infectious diseases; supporting international law; protecting the environment; promoting gender equality; and facilitating global diplomacy and cooperation. Ultimately, the UN is a global forum and a norm setter, and it's unique in including all 193 states as its members. It's a norm setter. That's how I would end my appreciation of the UN.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the students who sent through, as we've both said, some really brilliant and thought-provoking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.